Coming up, when the Stars step back onto the court for Brooklyn, it means one thing. You better dominate. The win better be easy. And the Nets did just that, taking care of the Washington Wizards. We're going to break down the performances of Kyrie Irving, of Kevin Durant, and the supporting cast, as quite frankly, this team just keeps on rolling.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, this is a Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen today, free on all those great platforms, and let you know today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. And Doug, how sweet it is when the Brooklyn Nets take the floor, expecting to and getting the win.
Yeah, look, we're following up the Pacers game here, which was one of the games of the year. And like we'll talk about, this one has a different kind of tone to it. But in the end, they won 8 of their last 9 games. This is one of the better, just sort of like 9 or 10 game stretches in the entire NBA at this point right now. It's kind of gone by quietly, if you think about it that way, right? It's been sort of, there was overshadowed a little bit by, the Celtics loss, which you come feeling a little bit disappointed by, but then your wind is all the way in the sails with the Pacers game. And then you come back here and I would call this a handle and business game, right? Like this is what you step into Washington and you just handle your business. They don't have Bradley Beal. This is a game you should win just about every time. This team matches up really well for the Nets in like what the Nets are trying to do. I wish they could play Washington every single game. We can talk about why. But in the end, this just felt like a pretty easy win, right? You get Durant off the court for the last couple minutes, and that's kind of all you want to ask for. And all of a sudden, like I said, 8 out of the last 9, it doesn't feel like a surge, but that's kind of what it looks like in the standings.
Yeah, 112 to 100 final score here for the Brooklyn Nets. He said never really got close, never got dangerous. And we always talk about this throughout the season. Even when a lead is down to single digits, there's a sense of impending doom when you feel like a team is about to make that run against you, versus this game where it just felt like, no. We're going to get that bucket from Kyrie. We're going to get a timely shot from Kevin Durant. We're going to get some supporting cast chipping in here, and we're going to take care of this one. And it's funny, too. The first thing, because I did want to contrast this just to the feeling as we came in fully electric on Saturday night after that Pacers game by the bench mob. But it's also funny that this run for the Nets, I think relative to, how it's been covering this team, there's always something going on. There's been nothing going on except for basketball. And that's uncharted territory for the Brooklyn Nets and for the fan base to just say, are we winning basketball games? And we can look at who they've played and who's been available for oppositions at a certain, we've said this already a couple of times, but it's just always going to drive this point home. Once you start winning 8 out of 9 games, it's just a good streak. It doesn't matter looking back at if you played the best or quality opponents along the way. That was the first big thing, though, before I just want to touch on the Pacers here, obviously, and that energy and how it does feel starkly different when you're watching the non-Kevin Durant, Kyrie Brooklyn Nets versus when they're on the floor.
That's a great point. I actually hadn't thought about that because it's when you said it's just starting to feel normal, right? Like it's starting to feel like a normal team. There has been no controversy. There has, even with getting Ben Simmons back, and he's looked really good out of the gate coming back from the injury. But in general, right? Like I think we're so used to having a storyline around the team, a question mark around the team, something to kind of dig into when it maybe frustratingly dig into about the minutes are all over the place. Well, they kind of cured that over the last couple of games with Durant, or you can't keep Kyrie in the court. Okay, well, he's been playing and he's been playing great. Simmons is back, right? Like the team's getting pretty healthy. All these, we went over the Jacques Vaughn thing, at length here about what we think he's done as a head coach. All of a sudden, dare we say it, the Nets are like a stable team. I know, look, this thing,
Looks like a basketball team in the NBA.
This thing has a tendency to do a 180 on you right when you start thinking a certain
5,
way.
4, 3, 2.
Some kind of bomb comes out here. But no, I think you're totally right. I think that, and this game exemplifies it, right? Like, this is the game that you look at and say, but going back to the beginning where we say taking care of business, you're able to take care of business against a team like the Wizards when your house is kind of in order, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's everything is just kind of settled. Players are playing well together. The chemistry seems like it's there. All these little boxes are getting checked. Winning cures a lot of those, but winning can be the cause of it too.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're looking at a situation like the Nets, I think over these last 9 games, with the one in between game being that Pacers game where they just did the damn thing, I think in a situation like that, we are looking at an almost 10-game stretch of just sort of a normalish team. And I think that more than anything is like the outlier in Nets world over the last couple of years.
Of course. And shout out to everybody hopping into the live YouTube. We're going to dive into Kyrie Irving's game, Kevin Durant, and some of the more specifics around this. But then you mentioned that Pacers game too. And just, I will say, I'm far happier to see the Nets winning games with Kevin Durant and Kyrie on the floor and it being comfortable and kind of in a lot of ways being ho-hum. Yeah, go win the game. If you're losing this game by 5 points in the fourth quarter, I'm starting to get a little apoplectic, right? Because I have real problems with what I'm watching. But it is just funny that when this game starts, that's what you have in you. You go, it's the Wizards, no Beal, let's win. I want to kind of sit back and relax. Don't want to really get my blood boiling too much. Saturday night, though, the buzz of the what could be when you're watching a bunch of the backup players try to get a win on the road against the Indiana Pacers, it is funny because that's probably maybe the next phase of stability for the Brooklyn Nets now is go give me a win where it's a Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons full strength against one of those upper echelon teams. Because that's when I'll start to get really hyped about what I'm seeing here. So I just some level of irony that I was more excited watching quote unquote nobody's on Saturday night than watching Kevin Durant and Kyrie do their thing again, as they've been doing for a number of games now.
And that's what you get when you get sort of like completely, and wholly different iterations of the team, right? Because like that Saturday team was just a totally different team than the Nets team. It was the same laundry, but I mean, in terms of who was actually out there playing a majority of minutes, it was
pants on your head, right? Socks on your hands. I don't know which way it's up.
But that's what makes it fun rooting for that laundry sometimes, right? When it looks a little different and the style is totally different and the energy is totally different. And that's what makes, just getting through an entire season, especially in the NBA with one team, trying to show up and watch every single game. That's actually what makes it fun. And these games are equally kind of fun, but the tone is going to be different. And we talked about this a little bit after the Pacers game, which was when we had so much energy and people saying like, we were down on the team. It's not that. It's just like there's parallel tracks around this team, around how we view things. But actually this game tonight against the Wizards, it's very easy to be so super positive because if you're a championship level or like deep playoff team, kind of playoff run kind of team, like we think the Nets are with this version that stepped onto the court, then this is exactly how you should come out and play. Like this is exactly what you should do. Very tight on both ends, taking advantage of all the mismatches we have, which we'll get more specific into this shortly, but just taking advantage of all those things. That is what good teams do. And good teams, when they're facing undermanned teams or just less talented teams, make it look kind of easy sometimes. And I think that was kind of the story here.
And I'll close out this portion before we get into the specifics from this game and what went so well for them. Edmund Sumner, I was watching on the broadcast on the Yes Network tonight. They talked about him after that Pacers game. And this is just, it speaks to everything else about stability and having all the focus just be about the results on the court. They were talking to him about, hey, is it great to get a win like that? And his response was so much of, listen, on this team with Kevin Durant, with Kyrie Irving, with Ben Simmons, we, me and some of the other collective supporting quote unquote, we know what our role is. But we're also NBA players. We're capable of going and doing that. It's on our shoulders in the moments when we have those opportunities to step up, to have Cam Thomas step up, to have these players come in and say, yeah, guess what? Our roles could be bigger on another team. But when you're a team that has aspirations that the Nets do, we take a little bit of a backseat to the superstars. And then this is how you kind of cement your value on the roster, knowing I step up in this moment. And then the very next game, I go right back into that role that I've been serving so well all season long. And I thought that was a really nice reminder and a very nice perspective from Edmund Sumner about what he is, what this team is, and why they think they can be so good this season, because everyone knows where their pocket lies.
Yeah, he said it kind of ticked him off, honestly. He said it
Yes,
ticked him
yeah,
off.
and
Like
I wanted the exact quote, but he was like, "Yeah, a little pissed off that everyone was like, what?
yeah.
Boy, do you think the Nets are going to be able to win this game? Like, we're all NBA players here, and we talk about that a lot. Like, you think that we're not here to play basketball and win games?"
Yeah, it was an awesome quote by him. Totally agree. Okay, we're gonna get into some of these specific performances from Kevin Durant, from Kyrie Irving, what the Nets were able to do in order to beat the Wizards pretty easily here. First, gonna talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Over on Prize Picks, you're making entries and you're just putting it up against the Prize Picks player projections, and you're just going more or less. You're not trying to fit in salaries. You're not trying to go in against all these sharks in the water. You're just picking 2 to 6 players, and you're just going if they're going to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. But it doesn't just need to be points either. With Prize Picks, they've got to figure it out with rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, and that's just for the NBA. You can do NFL as well. You go on touchdowns, yards, rushing yards. They got it all figured out. They made it very, very easy over at Prize Picks. And once you do the 2 to 6 player picks, you can win up to 25 times your money. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. This is the future of daily fantasy, folks. It's so simple, safe and fast withdrawals. They're currently operational in 30 states and Canada. You download the PrizePicks app or you go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive, wait for this, 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You got to use the promo code Locked On, just like our podcast network. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks is going to give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. You can figure out all the different other combinations in there. Don't forget to use the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
Yes, sir. So when we do now turn our attention to this game, there were a couple of moments in the the first 45 seconds or so, first minute and a half, where the Wizards were just slashing through the paint, just getting at the basket. And you thought, yeah, geez, let's not get into, oh no, we're okay. Kevin Durant does some of the lifting early, but I think talking about Kyrie Irving and how his game looked, and you mentioned at the top, specifically why this is such a Brooklyn Nets friendly matchup for them. But this was, I'm going to say vintage Kyrie, but every once in a while, I think every third or fourth game, you get the Kyrie fully in his bag on the court. And he had so many of those left hand in the lane, flips, body angles, twists, all of that kind of off balance work. The outside shot was falling for him at times as well. It was just one of those really good performances for him, arguably where for the first time, I think over this run, while he still had a lot of good games, this was one where Kevin Durant got to take a little bit of a back seat about a quarter and a half coming out of halftime. It became more Kyrie can lead this one down the stretch as opposed to Kevin Durant having to kind of put that best foot forward for a full 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah, look, I mean, took a back seat. Kevin Durant dropped 30 points in 33 minutes. I get what you're saying, where he did I know, I'm just busting your chops, everybody. No, I agree with you. And the thing about the thing about the almost said the Pacers, the thing about the Wizards, and we'll talk about them on the defensive end first, is that where the Nets get challenged at times is when you have guys who can specifically deal with Durant and Irving. Yeah. And the Wizards do not. They have nice players. Kristaps Porzingis, nice player. Kyle Kuzma, nice player. Beal, obviously, when he's playing, nice player. But even with Beal, these guys don't have an analog here on the defensive end to deal with either of these matchups. And you saw it kind of all game. Durant was able to get anything he wanted. And Kyrie, I mean, absolutely forget about it. The point of attack defense from the Wizards was not there. They played Kristaps in the zone/drop coverage that the Nets completely destroyed in the first half. And it was just, it wasn't a problem at all. This is why it looks so easy. The Wizards, again, for having a bunch of nice players, don't have anything defensively to be able to offer what the Nets are trying to do. And if they're going to play like Porzingis like they did, then you're going to see these very, very easy baskets from Durant and Irving. And Kyrie's always going to have a few sort of highlight reel layups. He had one that was just completely ridiculous where he faked it with right and then went up with his left. He was able to draw contact in the lane a bunch.
Kevin Durant, by the way, providing the instant replay on the sidelines for that insane bucket that he had, literally miming.
Totally. It was awesome. It's freaking ridiculous. He had a couple of these where he throws his body into a defender because he knows he's just going to be able to have so much control. That's because these defenders that it's the Pacers again. Got that Pacers game on my mind.
Beating teams doesn't matter who they are.
The Wizards, when it's Will Barton, when it's Jordan Goodwin, guys like this, they're just not going to be able to handle it, right? They're not going to be able to handle it. And the Wizards don't have have the interior sort of aptitude, especially with Porzingis on the court, to be able to offer any resistance. So if you're going to play this zone or this drop against guys who just feast in the mid-range, and if you try to get up on them, they're going to finish at the rim. It was just like so easy. This is why it looked so easy for Durant and Irving tonight, where it's honestly, where it's like you get to the end of the game, you're like, man, Durant scored 30.
Yeah.
like it just looked, it was the easiest 30 of all time. Right. It almost flashes by you because Kyrie's 24 was a little more flashy, but
I'm not gonna
you know
lie
what
to
I
you.
mean? Like, that's just kind of where we are.
No, you're busting my chops before, but when I went to look at the box score, I was anticipating, you know what I mean? But it's like with the way the game looked, you would have said flip those 30 for Kyrie,
Yes.
24 for Kevin Durant, because he's just kind of, when you need me. Now he did a lot of the lifting early in this one, but I think he had 18 of his 30 points in the first quarter and a half, essentially. So that is always the lulls that kind of have you forget what Kevin Durant is up to sometimes on the court. But it's also true too. Like we said it in that Pacers game where the Nets put up some insane stats with their bench rolls and guys really stepping up in a big way. But even when you go and look inside of the box score a little bit in this one, it's like the Nets don't have a good shooting performance from the outside, under 30%. They get beat narrowly on total rebounds. Like nothing about this game. They commit more fouls than the Wizards do. This is where when you go by the box score, you'd say, oh man, the Nets could have lost this one by 6 or 7 points. But again, because of the matchups, it was actually incredibly easy to play a just kind of average game. Give me your B. Give me a B- performance from the team, and you're going to get this win. And that's not a negative because everyone was still serving the roles in the right way. Was there anything specifically, because I was thinking about, and I don't want to go on the negative side of it here, but so say Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving here, but there was some rotational stuff that I was curious about inside of this game that they were able to maybe get away with a little bit. Kevin Durant at the start of, I think at the back end of the second quarter there was that moment where they got into just kind of that ISO set and stopped moving the ball a little bit. And it's been interesting because so much of their success individually and collectively has just been about those extra passes and that extra ball movement. I thought for the majority of the game, they maintained that, but they had those little lapses where it was just like, hey, check back into, kick it out, get the ball right back, get to your spot. It's easy, I think, in a game like this to want to settle into your spots and just try to work on a one-on-one matchup and get the job done.
Yeah. So I think along those lines, like on the one hand, you could look at it and say, okay, well, the Nets only took 27 for 3-pointers in this game to the Wizards 31. Those are pretty low numbers overall, even for the Nets who don't jack up a ton of threes. On the other hand, sometimes if you see that number, you would think to yourself, oh, there was this stagnation. Like there were a lot of turnovers. They weren't getting into what they can really do really, really well. The thing is, this goes back to what I was saying before. The way the Wizards play, specifically defensively, they just didn't need to take the threes. Like they weren't even needing to be available because the other baskets were so easy. And that is why I think you see the shot distribution, even for a team that basically wants to run all the offense through these two guys. 34 of the 89 shots go through these two guys, but not one of them was of the forced type, right? Sometimes when you see these breakdowns for the Nets, you think, oh, this turned into ISO, your turn, my turn, super ISO ball. And these are the times we get really, really frustrated. While the stats would look like that was what happened in this game, it really wasn't. That wasn't the case here. It was just that the defense, they were never going to throw doubles. Both Durant and Irving could eat their defensive matchups alive. They have no interior help at all. So when they're not going to get any under help, especially in a drop, again, these guys can murder it. And then look at who else can murder that kind of setup too. TJ Warren, a guy who can get into his kind of mid-range game and take advantage of a lesser defender. He has arguably his best game as a net. He goes 6 for 10 in his 19 minutes and scores 12 points. That's not by accident. It's just because what the Wizards are allowing to happen defensively sets up perfect. I tweeted this out. I was like, I wish the Nets again could play this team every time. It sets up perfectly for what the Nets do on the defensive end. So it's not surprising to me it's quiet games from Harris and Curry because that's just not, they don't need it. The other baskets from the guys that are going to live in the mid-range and beat defenders one-on-one is simply going to be good enough.
And it's funny, too, because you mentioned TJ Warren. I thought a really nice game from him. We can even extend that a little bit. Want to touch on Ben Simmons, too, but you did mention Joe Harris and Seth Curry. And I'll just say, before we turn our attention over to why this game script could have got a little weird pretty early on here with Nicholas Claxton and his foul trouble. Remember, Joe Harris, 5 for 9 from the field, only took 3.3 attempts from the outside. And a lot of that, I think, to what you're speaking to, is the access to the lane and his ability to get towards the basket, take what's being given to you, right? Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. And when it's at the halftime and you're up 7, you think maybe it should be closer to 15. You can get that little bit of that, hey, let's make sure we get this across here. But again, don't force the issue. Don't try to manufacture opportunities that you don't need to, because ultimately when you win by 12 going away, it really was a comfortable win. And I think the Nets, Jacques Vaughn, did a good job of saying, if it's there, let's just take it. We don't need to find a way to win this game. The Wizards will allow us to win this one effectively.
Totally. And by the way, it's again why you get 19 minutes out of Cam Thomas too. Again, think about the guys that are going to be able to
fill it
totally
up.
With guys that are going to be able to play in this kind of matchup. This one sets up well for what Cam does well and doesn't expose the things that he doesn't do as well, especially in the offensive end and defensively too, because they're not going to have anyone that can use him like a turnstile. Okay. We got a few other things to get to. Again, thanks for everyone. We got a ton of people over here in YouTube, people throwing comments. We will stay after the show for a little bit to do some extra bonus YouTube stuff. If you're not listening, or if you're listening over on the podcast, make sure you're over at YouTube. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football, college football, we're getting into bowl season, basketball, obviously, World Cup, a few games left over there. Got it all over at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts like this one, you can find those on BetOnline as well. The fastest and easiest way to get all of that betting info. Head on over to the website today. Use that mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And don't forget, my friends, you make the Locked On Nets podcast your first listen. Why don't you make that second listen, Locked On Sports Today? From the games that matter most to the biggest storylines in sports, go beyond the scoreboards and behind the scenes with the local experts that only the Locked On Network can provide for you. Locked On Sports Today is available on the Audible app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast needs fulfilled. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I think are also worth pointing out here. And because we've talked about it before too. It's like we could go in and I was saying, like, you could nitpick a little bit some of the defensive things and, offensive sense that's stagnated at times here. But I'm just going to keep pushing positive. You already mentioned TJ Warren. Nicholas Claxton gets 3 fouls in the first 7 seconds of this game, effectively. Gets his first 2, gets taken out. They bring him back in, picks up the third. I thought, one, he still did a good job. It's not a physical team when we talk about the Wizards. So he did a nice job nursing himself to 26 minutes and still being productive, giving you 7 rebounds. But when that happens, you can start to think, all right, where are we going to go into the rotation here? Yuta Watanabe, his second game back off of injury. But Jacques Vaughn gives a little bit more run in that moment. He uses Markieff Morris. And it was funny on the broadcast. They even said Markieff Morris is growing in his role, not in his minutes, but in his role on this team. And that it sounds kind of conflicting, but it was like, hey, tough spot. Give me the veteran that just knows how to function. Let me buy some time until we figure out how we're going to make our adjustment and keep moving forward. Same thing for Yuta Watanabe in this one. Second game back, gives you 19, it's TJ Warren, gives you 21 minutes for Watanabe. It's a bad shooting night for him. Got to the basket multiple times and just couldn't quite finish, but still played a plus 13. Like, I think when we start to look at the supporting cast, time and again, we're probably going to come back to where it's, hey, it doesn't always need to be scoring production. You can be productive in other areas when you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving putting on these kind of performances. Watanabe, Morris, you said even Cam Thomas just eating minutes when you're up in games like this. All those players matter, checking those boxes.
Yeah, I agree that being able to bring these guys that are, it's nice to be afforded, and they haven't been able to be afforded this in the past, is that when you lose a guy like Claxton, your best interior defender, I mean, by far, you are able to actually at least bring functional length in off the bench. No one that matches his size, but at least these guys are pretty long. Like Markieff is pretty long. Obviously, we know Yuta is pretty long. Even TJ Warren, who they had playing the 4 for a lot of the time that he was in here, especially when he paired his minutes with Claxton. It was like Claxton, Warren, and then 3 shooters. Like he's playing a real small ball 4. Like being able to bring this length in off the bench helps. And then obviously, I mean, we should probably talk a little Simmons here before we get out the door. But like being able to bring these dudes in, it's just like, yeah, are they like perfect players? No. Is Yuta regressing a little bit with shooting? Obviously, that was just going to happen. But just having that option is just, even that's just different than what they've had in the past, of just like a little bit of length. Oh my God, a 6'7" guy coming in off the bench who can actually dribble. Like my stars and garters. My God, like, I can't even believe it's happening. So like, I think that's the nice part of just having the way the roster is built now that you'd be able to see even in a 5-minute stretch or like 20 for Yuta. Yeah. And when you combine it with Simmons, like that they're able to just play minutes that will make up for the fact that you lost your only real center in Claxton.
Yeah, I do want to turn my attention to Simmons, and I'll just say the TJ Warren functionality, the little more length. You said playing him at the 4. Again, the trickle-down effect. We talked about Joe Harris before. Now he gets pushed down a roll. Everyone gets pushed down a little roll when you have a little more length that you can bring in there and just kind of keep people into their pocket. So that's something that you can – we want to tip the cap to Sean Marks about the moves that he made in the offseason. It looks like they're working out. Sumner has that length as well in the backcourt for them. So these guys had nice little support performances. But Ben Simmons, we didn't blow past him for no reason at all. 23 minutes, 5 and 9 from the field, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 10 points. The first bucket for the Brooklyn Nets, I could be mistaken. I think it's a coast-to-coast for Ben Simmons off of a rebound. I could be wrong. I could just be dreaming on it being that first shot. It's actually Kyrie Irving has the first basket in this game, so I know it's not true. However, Ben Simmons' first bucket was defensive rebound. He gets it, coast-to-coast, tacks at Kristaps Porzingis, who, by the way, this is another sample size, 3rd of 4 meetings. Every time they've played him, Joe Harris is physical with Kristaps Porzingis. Like everyone, it kind of beats up on him early, and that takes one of their best weapons out of it. Ben Simmons attacking downhill, finishing at the glass, another couple of buckets that he put in and around the basket. He's just the confidence, the fluidity on the offensive end is really there. And that's all you kind of want to see as he's coming back these first few games after missing a handful.
Yeah, look, the team plays a totally different style when he's on the court. He pushes the pace off makes, he pushes the pace off misses. He's clearly more confident. And like what the best thing for him really has been after this injury, like this little whatever happened with his knee and his back in this last one, that didn't take didn't take away any of his aggression on the offensive end that had started to finally come around, right? Like when we were seeing before this latest stint on the bench with the back, we had seen him turn the corner literally and figuratively with how he was handling the ball. That was very different from the beginning of the season. My biggest fear with when he took a somewhat extended layoff was that was going to disappear a little bit. That has not. Like he is still looking to get downhill. He's way more comfortable around the basket. A game like this, they don't need him to really shoot at all. He did have like the little baby righty runner. He did have a dunk off a Kyrie interior pass that looked like it was kind of with confidence. He did hit the deck once, which I think is good. Like he went up for a shot and I don't know if he got fouled, but he definitely landed awkwardly, got back up and kept running. Those are the little things that for honestly with Simmons at this point, and he's playing well. So it's not like just trying to grab these little positives. I think he's playing well, but he's also showing you just in like style and body language, the things, at least for me, that I was most worried about when he went back out with the back issue. Because it's like, oh, the back and knee are an issue again. Is this going to are we going to be babying this a little bit? Like, is this, because that's always going to be a problem for any athlete, specifically for a guy like him that has to be sort of peak physicality to be able to take advantage of his skills. That has not diminished at all in this return. And that's a really, really good sign. I know he's still on the minutes limit, so he's not going to push 30. Luckily in this game, you don't really miss it too badly, right? For him not to play with Claxton in foul trouble. But if this is going to be the progression for him, we are on a timeline, as long as he stays healthy, what you mentioned at the top of the show, getting to a point where they've won the games they're supposed to be winning. And then there's going to be a point in the schedule, barring some unforeseen circumstance, where 2 games from now, they're going to get Golden State and then Milwaukee 2 games in a row. And those are going to be like the real games, right?
And the Cavs.
And then the Cavs right after that. Toronto's a good team, so that's a real one too. So I'm not diminishing that. Then it's Detroit. That should be a W. But then, 3 games in a row against 3 of the best teams so far this year in basketball. Golden State, and they stumbled a little bit, but look, they're coming off the championship. Golden State, Milwaukee, Cleveland. That's going to be the stretch. And for Simmons specifically, who they definitely need to beat those teams on a consistent basis, the progression for him is on sort of the right timeline, I think, with how he's looking right now, because he's specifically what they need to deal with what those teams do really, really well. So it's a really nice sign. I'm hoping the minutes continue to get ramped up here as he's going. Hope there's no setbacks, but this was just another game where you're like, yeah, when it's working, it fits really, really well with this team.
And so obviously we'll stick around here on YouTube, do a little more chatter, but coming up with a couple of off days. They don't play again until Friday night against Toronto, as you mentioned. There'll be a couple of days here to think about TJ Warren, only playing 20-ish minutes or so. If he keeps growing in that role, we can start to kind of look at how it impacts the roster, the rotations, and how it affords you to kind of say, we always talk about the superstars, your turn, my turn, possession to possession, game to game. Now you can even start talking about that in the role players and the supporting cast, right? They can take turns on who steps up in support of the superstars, and that changes the dynamic of this team as well.
All right, we'll hang around here for a little bit in YouTube, so make sure you're subscribing over on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as we climb toward 4,000. I think we'll get there before the new year, but you can be part of it. If you're not subscribed to Locked On Nets YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe over on YouTube.
Hey, man, and I'll be taking care of business every day. Taking care of business every way. I've been taking care of business. It's all mine. Taking care of business and working overtime. Work out. That's going to be Bachman Turner Overdrive, my friends.
One of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
It's the podcast show. Bachman Turner Overdrive. I'm pretty sure I've never heard anything else they've ever made, but that one song, that's all right.
What movie was that referenced in? Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Work out. Now, we should probably talk about that off air, as I just realized we're still doing a podcast. Everyone over on YouTube, thanks for coming in. It has to mean something. Yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Do the at Locked On Nets if you want to shout it out. We're going to talk a little Bachman Turner Overdrive here as well, because it is from a movie, and it's probably one it's probably one of my favorites, which is really going to bother me. What do I think about? What do I think about it? I think a lot about it. Was this Christopher? I think a lot about John Collins. I think I like him a lot. And I'd love to give nothing for him. I'll give you Cam Thomas for John Collins straight up. Get the deal done.
I actually don't. Collins is fine. I don't know how much he really benefits what the Nets need. Like, they'll get murdered if you play small ball 5. Like, I think you'd rather have Simmons in that spot anyway. I guess he could pair with Simmons. Okay. He's fine. I don't think he's a guy where the Nets are that puts him over the top. Is John Collins closing playoff lineups? I don't think in the way that we think about this team, I'd be hard pressed to think that he would be in these closing lineups. Unless Claxton isn't playing. This gets a little weird with where they are with this team, but you couldn't ever play him at the 3. So at that point, if you have John Collins, you're
but small ball who's 5 not playing? With Kevin Durant at the 5.
And then Simmons playing the functional 3, I guess, something like that. Yeah. I guess so. Then Claxton doesn't play. I don't know. Is he good enough defensively? I'm not sure. Probably not. I get why people want him, because they want a stretch big. That's what everyone's desperate for. I still know that people just underrate Claxton. I'm sure of it. Smart basketball people, the stats, everything backs up that Claxton is a winning basketball player. I know people don't want to hear it because they either have a preset thing. I'm not saying this about Christopher, by the way. So I'm just going to say this in general. They have a preset notion about what they think the Nets need, and then that's it. All the things that Claxton doesn't do just fits into a narrative around what the Nets need. And that really, really misses the forest for the trees. He is good. The numbers back it up. They played plus net rating with him on the court. He's one of the best switching bigs in the whole league. He just does things, especially come playoff time, that you really need your bigs to do. You really need your bigs to sit on an island with opposing guards. You need them to hold up in those matchups. And he does that. And guys like Collins don't do enough to make, in my opinion, to make up for the things Claxton does really well. I get that he does more things that maybe show up in the box score, like scoring or shooting threes when he stands wide open in the corner, because that's what he does with the Hawks, especially when Capella plays, is he literally just stands in the corner and does nothing else. Go watch their games. That's all he does. When Capella starts at the 5, Collins is just a corner 3-point shooter. That's why he wants out of Atlanta, by the way, because that's all they have him doing, because he doesn't want to play that role anymore. Anyway, John Collins, nice player. I just don't see him as a guy who tips it over the mountain.
It's interesting too, because it is all as you and I've said time and time again. It's Claxton is the guy. I believe in Claxton. He's going to be the guy that matters significantly. If it's Kevin Durant, then Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, Nicholas Claxton is the next guy in line. that is critical to their success. And I think he's more than capable of doing it. And it is funny when you think about adding pieces of any kind, it's how does it impact the other players and the other rotations and what you're going to end up trying to do with a John Collins or anybody. You throw at anyone. And by the way, when everyone, no one's mentioning here, I think someone said Mo Bamba again. When you throw out other like bigs that you want to bring into this, at a minimum, I'm always going to say you should be looking and thinking more about not small ball, but athletic, mobile, big. Like that's kind of what this team has been built on. Sometimes you also have to look at it through the prism of what is this team functioning as? Not, hey, get me a rim protector that we're going to then have to alter the way we function because we're going to be playing 4-on-5 when Ben Simmons grabs a quick rebound and wants to work in transition, but someone's hanging back behind the play and trying to get that offense set up.
Look, last thing on this with Claxton. Yeah. Zach Lowe over at ESPN in his 10 things I think I like column. He is that the right name of the column? Shoot, I just got that wrong. Yeah, Lowe's 10 things. He calls Claxton the unsung hero of the team. Like this is like one of the smarter, like just functional basketball minds around is in Zach Lowe in like ingesting X's and O stuff and putting it out there so other people can digest it. And he did a whole section on Claxton this past week that was basically just like, this guy's freaking good. Right. Like he's really freaking good. And it goes, and he puts it perfectly by saying unsung, because even Nets fans cannot wait to get him out the door. Like they want guys like Mo Bamba who can't play on the Magic. Like, and guys like this, or like DeMarcus Cousins, who can't play in the NBA. Right. Like, so, or Dwight Howard, who's like crushing it in China. Like this is like,
Doug, think
Nets fans want these guys out so badly. But it really, it's such a shame. Like it just misses completely what he does like really, really well. And I think, I don't know, whatever. I would invite everyone to try to see, try to see that with Claxton before we want to go sign Hassan Whiteside to play drop coverage and get murdered every game.
Yeah, you're missing the point though, Doug. It's when you have a guy that's like under 23, 24 years old and has been ascending as a talent in the league, you want to get him out of here as quick as possible. If there's one thing Nets know, Jared Allen, what a disaster. Thank God we got rid of him, because otherwise we'd be stuck here with a great player on our roster. I wanted to do that last time. Star Trek reference. I nailed it. Do you think there may be a point where Jacques Vaughn considers sitting Simmons and Claxton in rotation with Durant at center in clutch minutes?
They saw Jeff Green, sure, but they don't.
Like, by the way, man, I have a dirty little secret that I've been working on too. We'll talk about that later. No, yeah, they
don't have another guy. They just they were able to do that with the playoffs like a couple years ago when they had Jeff Green, who was really the 5, and he was the small ball 5, and Durant was like the 4. They just don't have that guy. I don't know why you would want to do it anyway.
I know. I was more thinking about the two best. Why would I want to take both of them off the floor completely? Yeah. Not a bad thought, though, man. I didn't throw them out there if you're into it. It's all good. The 15th, by the way, is when the first wave of players that had signed contracts through different restrictions can start to be traded and looked at here. So that's why you're starting to get a little more buzz around some of these names. What do we got from J-Man?
This is funny because Adam and I were at Adam's house Sunday morning, I think. I took the kid on the walk and stopped by the house. And Adam and I were talking about probably doing an episode about this, except the problem is to put this kind of thing out there is like controversial because it like makes it seem like we're pro or anti Kyrie, which we're not. But J-Man 3.0, hate to see the 2.0 and 1.0 versions of
those versions were disasters.
I mean, those things
were 3.0 is here.
Total disasters. Thank God for the upgrade. They are in a really tricky spot here with Kyrie. It's like, I don't know what the deal would look like. I do think if he keeps out of trouble here, like clearly the game is good and great. Like, we're seeing it again. I do think they're in a weird spot here. Like Adam and I were trying to think if there was any realistic trade. I don't think they would ever do it though. And like really trying to figure out where it is. It's not really there. And these are for other episodes. I guess my rambling point here is that this is something that we have noodled around with off the podcast to try to think if there's like an angle to take with it, that doesn't make us sound like we're anti-Kyrie, because we're not really, but like, right. But anytime you propose anything that's not them re-signing him, it makes it sound like you are anti-Irving. But the reality is he's coming into a contract year here, and they're going to be in a probably a terrible, weird spot with him
Yeah.
because giving him a long-term contract feels like a mistake. Letting him go feels like a mistake. It all feels not great. I don't know.
And we'll probably, I mean, listen, like you can kind of call us a tease because listen, we got 2 days off here. I think the 15th is coming. There's probably other things around improving the team or potentially what might they try to do, whatever. This is a pretty big narrative. And you said it right. Trying to have this discussion in the middle, by the way, in the middle of them winning a ton of games and Kyrie Irving playing really well.
It would be dumb. Yeah.
It'd be, it wouldn't be received the way we would intend it. Probably the most likely thing. I honestly, and this isn't like the best or whatever. I'm not even going to give my full opinion on it. They're just going to play out the string. They're going to play out the season. It's just going to be what it is, I think, because to your point, you don't know what he's thinking about, what he wants to do. I'm not saying that positive or negative. You don't know what the team is thinking about, what they want to do with him. You don't know how anyone feels internally on any sides of this. And even though winning basketball usually does cure a lot of those ills, I don't know if there's really anything that's going to happen here shy of, let's say the Nets totally pull this thing out and they go win a championship. It'd be the perfect reason for Kyrie to say, thanks so much, I'll see you later. And for the Nets to say, thanks so much, I'll see you later, right? If they come really close, it might be the perfect excuse to say, we need to go do something else. So there's so many versions of this thing that could happen. I think we're probably 20 games from now, if nothing's happened again with anybody and it's all just basketball and it's all just winning games, it'll probably start to crystallize a little bit more.
Wait, hold on real quick. Don't put I have one I wanted to put up here.
Okay, go ahead.
I just clicked off it because I wanted to find the odds real quick here. Yeah, okay. So Michael said, assuming he continues to play, what's that?
That was the one I was putting up.
Okay, good. Great minds. Where would the Nets need to finish in the East for Durant to have a real chance at MVP? Okay, I was trying to find a book that had it here because our friends over at BetOnline did not. But I would assume, because most places take this down during games, just so no one steams injuries. But and I did find one that has it, a respectable one that has it. I'm not going to say right now. I find this insane. Right now, Durant is 10th in MVP odds. That is just wrong, I think, based on how well he's played this season and the fact that the Nets are actually climbing the standings. I'll give you the players that are ahead of him right now. Tatum, that makes sense. Giannis makes sense. Luka makes sense just because the stats are ridiculous. Curry there, probably on name, and he's been really good this season. Embiid, a little confused by that one, just because he's been injured a ton, although when he's played, it's been awesome. Devin Booker gets bumped here because they played well without Chris Paul. Jokic, makes sense. Ja, and then Donovan Mitchell. That one makes no sense. Should not be over Durant. So I do think that I think the Nets would probably have to finish top 2 in the East for him to be able to be able to think about winning. I do think, though, it's a shame because how he's played this season, he should be higher in this conversation. It's hard to move him again. You can never move him above Tatum and Giannis for starters, for sure. I would probably, would I put him over Luka right now? I don't know. It shouldn't be this far apart. I guess my point is the Heat, Dallas right now is 13-13. Luka's stats are ridiculous because he has the ball 90% of every possession for their team, as he should. He's amazing. It's not a dig on Luka, but Luka shouldn't be plus 300 and Durant plus 3,500 in terms of MVP odds. That is a joke. It's not representative of how well Durant has played this season, what he took on when everyone basically, Kyrie wasn't there and Simmons was hurt and all this other stuff. So I'm with you, Michael. I don't think he's going to, I wouldn't bet it right now, even at plus 3,500, because I don't think the narrative will ever get there for him. The Nets probably can't leapfrog some of the teams they would need to leapfrog in order for him to have a functional chance. And it's crazy that he's this low in markets.
Well, I'll tie it into it in a humorous way. If there, knock on wood, everything, whatever. If a key player went down, if Kyrie Irving went down with an injury and Kevin Durant kept this trajectory and kept this team in a top 4, top 3 kind of seeding, then you'd start to see him rise because it'd be solely on his shoulders in a lot of ways. If the Brooklyn Nets were trading Kyrie Irving and you know what I mean? If it solely became that he is the primary leader of this team for 50, 60, 60 games at the back end of this season, then I think you start to push him there. But in some ways it gets watered. It's such a weird set of circumstances. From an NBA narrative standpoint, everyone dumps on Kyrie, but they also use him, I think, as a tent pole for a reason why, well, you would never put Kevin Durant into this upper echelon category because he has Kyrie Irving, right? So his performance on the court in some ways takes away from it. It's why a guy like Luka will always be up, high on this list because he doesn't have that secondary superstar player that maybe eats away a little bit at it, or at least eats away at the perception of it. But if they keep winning games too, it's going to start to shift here because I agree with you. As insane as the stats are for Luka, it's hard for me to look at it and go, yeah, you're doing all this work to be 500. Kevin Durant
is doing ahead of him. I don't.
Well, the
I don't know.
Is probably the most. Yeah, just from you said the injury standpoint. How many games? I mean, because he's missed a ton this year, right?
He hasn't missed tons, but he's missed 4 or 5 games this season so far. He's played. I mean, he's been the stats are there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I get it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being pro Durant here. Just real quick, PER leaders in PER right now. Anthony Davis, who's also plus 3,500 with Durant, is 1. Jokic 2, Doncic 3, and Embiid 4. Maybe I'm dumping on Embiid too much. Giannis 5, Shea 6, KD 7. And then
they had it up too. He's leading in like 4 key offensive categories and is 5th in field goal attempts per game. Like he is having the most efficient game, offensive game in the NBA this season. So in some ways, 10th on the list that you're referencing, it's like if you're not up there right now, at least, you know what I mean, traveling in those circles, you're never going to get there. And so he said after a post game, he's like, I've been there, done that. And he's like, I'm pretty sure I won't be able to do whatever I would need to do in order to be considered really in that conversation.
I will say one other thing with this is just that it's a real testament. This is not Durant related. It's a real testament, excuse me, about the talent level in the NBA right now. It's just
always gets choked up when he talks about talent.
Just freaking ridiculous. Like the fact that the guy like Zion's having a season that's just been absolutely awesome. And the Pelicans have like the best record, second best record in the NBA. And he's behind Durant and Davis.
Right. So
and I'm sure like Pelicans fans could, Jake Madison over at Locked On Pelicans could probably do a whole podcast about why Zion's so low in the MVP odds right now with the season they're having. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just more about the talent level is ridiculous in the NBA right now. And we have just all these, I was too low on Embiid. That was my mistake. All these guys just completely balling out it will actually probably get down to just like what teams have the best record in the end, right? Like if Boston just finishes with the best record and Tatum has the season, then you just win. Because otherwise you need to do sort of what Jokic did last year, which was literally be the only guy on the team and put up completely ridiculous numbers. And that's really the only way he won is because. Yeah. And I don't think we're going to get a similar situation with any of these guys this season.
We should do a crossover episode with like all the hosts, anywhere from like 10 to 15, who all feel like their MVP candidates being disrespected.
Oh my God, all these guys are so impossible. I could never do it. Like, we'll see. I'm just kidding. Whoever's listening to the podcast here,
great. No, we love everybody. Let's get I'll just the last one that came up here, and then we'll get out of here. Could Joe Harris be moved in a larger trade to acquire John Collins? I mean, I'll take John Collins out of because we talked about him. I wouldn't. We've been pro not moving Joe Harris, so I would say I wouldn't move Joe Harris, and I don't know
for like. It's all about.
I mean, all relative to who you're going after, but
yeah,
to acquire John Collins, I wouldn't. I would say probably because
it'd probably be close for me. I don't know.
Yeah, like the functionality would be it'd be interesting, right? Yeah, I mean, you can paint the picture for it, but again, by the way, no matter even at Joe Harris's highest value when he's knocking down his triples. Again, if you're getting into waters talking about trade discussions with people, thank you, Afro Lore for the question. They're probably going to go, I prefer Seth Curry, who cost $11 million less. You know what I mean? Like, and the number, I know numbers have to add up sometimes, and that's when the big contract for Harris can benefit you. But like, I'm as pro trade machine vibing things out, and I found a great one, Doug. Wait till I about this. But other teams want the value too. Like, they're not just there to take on whatever contract makes sense. And then you get into these 3-team deals, and it starts to get really muddy. So it'll be interesting to see what teams start to be talked about as being interested in some of these players, because again, Nets, Lakers, teams that don't have a lot of assets, don't have a lot of cap room. It's really hard to swing these deals when you want to add a piece.
Yeah, I don't know. It's never really, I'm still of the mind that the Nets are not going to make any huge splash. I just don't think, it's less about the player. I just don't think they have the assets to do it. The Harden trade completely tapped them. They really don't. They have very, very little in the coffers now. And it will be interesting. I think the most interesting thing will be less about who the player is near the trade deadline. Like, what they could even functionally get. Like, I think that's actually the bigger thing because they only have, I think, 2 draft picks left, really, maybe 3. And I just don't know if they're going to have enough to really, I don't know if that's enough to be able to swing any like real swing piece for what they need. But I mean, that's probably a discussion for another day.
Yeah, and the funny thing is too, to watch for. It's like in the off season when the big trade happens, and you end up, when Utah's just shedding off everybody and they're giving away when they're getting a king's ransom for Rudy Gobert. When you look at those, like that's, I think what we'll watch too is what is the price that teams end up paying for certain players? How close could the Nets have been of being in those conversations, right? So sometimes it's like what the market ends up dictating can either make you feel like, yeah, the Nets never could have even gone near those waters, or hey, it looks like maybe you could have if you found a way to push a little something extra in. Could you have gotten player X or Y? So those things will start to come up here as we all work right towards it. But other than that, Wizards stink. We win, and we'll see the Toronto Raptors on Friday.
All right. Appreciate everyone jumping in here on YouTube. Just an amazing kind of turnout again. Really, really appreciative. Wish we had more games during the week to do more live after the post games. That's the way that I think it's just not going to work out the way that it sets up this week. So
did you figure out the movie?
Nah, I looked up Bachman Turner Overdrive on movie, but then it just was a bunch of movies about Bachman Turner Overdrive, and I didn't want that. It's like a reference. It's a reference in a movie, and it's going to drive me nuts now because I have never heard of this band except for this whatever movie I'm thinking that some character in the I'm gonna be like it's Wayne's World or something like that, but that's not it. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll probably end up spending the rest of the night doing this. Okay, I gotta get out of here. You gotta get out of here. We all gotta get out of here. We will be back again. Appreciate everyone jumping into YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on the way out. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.